Anybody who says I can get rid of the BDR is lying to you. Like they're just lying to you.
We have a guest who spent 6 years at Forrester as their primary sales, AI, and technology analyst. No one has a sharper BS detector on this topic.
You have CEOs who don't really know how all this stuff works, and they're pushing on all of their go-to-market leaders to get rid of these people, which is baffling. You hire these people to go make you money. You shouldn't be looking for ways to save money in places you're trying to make money. So why the freaking hell are we having so many conversations of replacement instead of how do I optimize and enhance?
Well, all right. Welcome, everyone, to the Stack GTM podcast series on the Agentic BDR and SDR, brought to you by the GTM Council. I'm Noah Marks, and co-host here is Andy Moat. A reminder, Stack GTM podcast is where we tackle all the emerging GTM AI trends from perspectives of practitioner and founder. Today we're going to do things a little bit differently. We do a lot of pods with either the practitioners building the stuff and the vendors selling it. Today we have a guest who spent 6 years at Forrester as their primary sales, AI, and technology analyst. He's now at Sandler, where he's seeing the practitioner side up close, which means he's evaluated every major wave in this space and has the receipts to prove it. He's also the author of the weekly newsletter, This Week in B2B Revenue, and no one has a sharper BS detector on this topic than our guest today and fellow GTM Council member, Seth Marrs. Seth, welcome to the pod.
Yeah, great to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, us too. And honestly, I love it. I've told you this before, but you're a believer in the technology much as I am, and every bit the skeptic of the narrative. And that's what we're here to kind of pull apart a little bit. Excited to have this conversation. But first, tell us what you're doing over with Sandler. Everyone has to be aware of Sandler by now. We're not going to define it. The sales methodology that's been around for 60 years ish. Tell us what you're doing over there.
Yeah, so I'm responsible for strategy there, and one of the cool things about that job is I've been brought in to be able to usher Sandler into this type of world we're living in with all the cool stuff happening with AI, all of the different things that are going on there. So taking a very established, well-known methodology and then seeing how you could make that work in this new world, which is really, really cool because up until, I mean, I would say even today, like getting an ROI or making sure that sellers adopt training just hasn't been possible. You kind of buy it because you believe in it. But you don't get to see it. So that's one of the things I've been really working on and doubling down on. It's been kind of cool to be in like a methodology space because it still allows me to function around the technology side and stay unbiased. So working at all these different areas, helping sales leaders kind of build, like we're also building a consulting arm as well to go out and help companies and expand beyond just the sales training side of things.
Yeah, there's a it's the fundamentals that continue to win. There's like, if you don't have a methodology that everybody's following, that means everyone's doing it themselves. It's the tried and true practice. So no, it's a cool area, and it's just you need it, right? So all right, let's jump onto the topic here. So the Agentic SDR BDR is everywhere. We've had the privilege of having a number of guests on talking about their perspectives on the market, what they're doing. So when you strip away all of the marketing, which is sometimes tough to do, what's your perspective on what's really happening, whether it's technically and operationally, and is the SDR BDR role going away? That's a loaded question. And then how far are you seeing the reality of what's happening in the space from what vendors are pitching?
So like the first thing to look at is anybody who says I can get rid of the BDR is lying to you. Like they're just lying to you. I mean, just take a simple outbound motion, like picking up the phone and calling a customer. AI can't do, they can do it, but you wouldn't do it. It's the same thing in why it's really hard to record calls when you do outbound motions because you have to ask for permission. Similar
Yeah.
type thing there. So like we're gonna do all of this for you and just hire my BDR and we're gonna handle it. That's great if you want a motion that is basically all digital and works functions largely like a marketing automation tool did a few years ago, except you get personalized emails. So like for me, there is, so that being said, I think that like whenever you hear that, that's like a red flag of vendors blowing smoke. They're just trying to tell you something that kind of makes you think, what's going on. Like, should I make this change? And the sad thing is it's working. So I partner with Kathy. I don't know if you know Kathy Mackey, who's one of the founders of a company called Inverta.
Yep.
And we've been I've been joining her calls with CMOs and with practitioners around demand. And the prime reason I was asked to join was because all of her CMOs are getting asked by their CEOs, why are you not getting rid of all of your BDRs and just automating it with AI? Like, it's that big of a problem that you have CEOs who don't really know how all this stuff works, and they're pushing on all of their go-to-market leaders to get rid of these people, which is, it's baffling. But so I get pulled in to go, okay, well, is this true? Like, should I be getting rid of them? Like, what should I do? And like, the reality is no, you shouldn't. But yes, you should be using these tools because they're phenomenal at being able to do very specific tasks. Like, you should be able to 2 and 3x what a BDR does in this world. Like, the amount of research you could do. You see a lot of like effective BDRs that do hours of research and then make 10 calls. Like, you should be able to use AI to do a lot of that research for you and then make 50 calls. So, but with the same level of research that you're doing before, you should be able to do top of funnel custom automated emails out that are way better than the templated ones. Like, there's just like inbound, if you're doing inbound and you haven't explored like how do I use AI for inbound, because with inbound you have permission. So
Right.
they're asking to talk to you. You can call them back with an agent and let the agent book or delegate. Like, there's just really cool use cases that you could put in play that would make a big difference for your business. That's where you should be focusing. Like, cut all the BS around, oh, let me get rid of this role and dump these. Like, that's just not I don't think it's healthy and productive. And I haven't seen a company that's actually done it well. And like, usually, like I had this conversation. I forget, there was a company that when I was an analyst, I went and did like their keynote, and their RevOps person came and was like, hey, we are so far advanced. I just let go of all of my BDRs and we're doing it all with AI. I'm like, that's stupid. And like, if you're having success with that, what that says to me is that you have really, really bad BDRs. Because
Yeah.
if you can outperform with an automated motion, wow, like that's a problem. But
So,
yeah,
so,
oh, go ahead.
so I maybe the function doesn't go away, but just the role collapse, Seth. Right. So
Oh yeah.
instead of having BDRs and AEs, do you more say, AE, we're going to give you all this tech where now we want you to be full funnel AEs where you're actually doing the prospecting yourself? And so I think, we talk about this in marketing in different places, like roles will collapse, but it doesn't mean the actual need to do the job goes away.
Totally. And I mean, the big question with that, right? Because you see it on partitioning in two sides, right? People saying, let me pull this into my marketing motion and I'll get rid of the BDR and it'll be my marketing motion. Or let me drag it down into the sales role and let the salesperson do the prospecting side. That sounds great in practice. The biggest challenge to it that I see is you've got a pipeline, right? And sellers will work their deals from closest to closing to farthest away from closing. And I think anybody that's working with those sales leaders would say that's the right thing to do. But what that means is you get choppy execution. Never mind the fact that the top of the top of pipeline stuff is not fun, right? Like, you're having to make a bunch, like it's a grind. So very easy to make the excuse of, hey, I'm trying to close deals, so I don't do it. I think it's possible, and every seller should be prospecting anyway. But the only way that'll work is if you have a way to ensure that you get the same level of rigor at the top of your like at the early stage of your pipeline that you do at the end of your pipeline, and that's never been cracked, right? Like, but it's always been a prioritization, and you never get. I mean, think about how much money companies spend to put a person at that qualification stage, and they're desperate to do it in a lot of cases. Even today, like people talk about, oh, the BDR, but BDRs are getting hired everywhere, including at Anthropic, including at like all of these companies. But that qualification role is just such a challenge. Like if you looked at it at a high level, you'd like, why do I have this role? Like a seller is supposed to prospect, like they're supposed to be able to do this, but they don't. And so I think it's possible, Andy, but it would have to, like, you'd have to be able to figure out the capacity thing to make sure they gave it the time that it was.
This is, I'm excited when this podcast drops, because this quote I will send to a lot of people over a lot of time, which is I also, the only thing I would add to everything you said is context switching is huge, right? Like, I think your point on choppy execution was really relevant, right? Like this is not their primary thing. They don't get paid on how much pipeline they get created. They get paid on how much they close. So they're
Exactly.
always going to do this no matter what. So I couldn't agree more with you. I think a lot of people need to hear this. I think as we write the ebook, I'm excited to know how to flow this through there, because I think it's a whole section of, yeah, you could collapse it, but it may not be the right thing. I think it's like you could still argue giving these tools to your AEs, but maybe, but you still need the dedicated people to make sure the pipeline is there and it's not choppy execution, as you say.
Yeah, and I think about it, they absolutely should have the tools, right? And they also should be doing their own prospecting, especially like if you hear people talk about like the place where I could see it collapse too is net new versus cross sell upsell, right? Like these tools are just as good at cross sell upsell. Let the BDR do the net new, and you just use these tools to be able to expand yourself into these different companies. So I think they all need that muscle, and they should have accountability to use it. It's just when you're running a factory of trying to really get these things going and get solid prospects in hand, the BDR has always been kind of the way to make that factory go. I heard one other person talk, like, because I've talked to a few people about this too and like watched it. A thing that I think is really important as well is, what's your company sales motion? So if you're doing like high velocity sales where you're trying to churn through that, you probably don't need a BDR, right? Like, because that BDR, your whole job as a seller is to get the new prospects, close them, and you're moving through. So you don't have a pipeline that you're kind of trudging through. But if you're in a long cycle deal and you're having to work multiple stakeholders and you have all of that type of stuff, BDR, let them handle that part and fill the funnel. That also has math too, right? Because if you're in those big long cycle deals, they're going to be 200, 300, 400 million dollar type deals. You can let the BDR help build on that front end. The transactional stuff, I could see that going away to a certain extent. That's gone away in B2C already, because everything's like a turn, and you wouldn't have a BDR to do your like stationary order. It's like you just use inside sales and have them do the full cycle, because the full cycle is, hey, I want to place an order, or I'm considering, and then I do it.
So
What's the
where do you guys come into the picture? Like I've known like Noah said, like I've known Sandler forever, the methodology, I think about that. But is somebody saying, "Hey, I need to bring in agentic," you said earlier, like 2 to 3x productivity and all that. Are you guys helping people implement these tools, or like where does the Sandler expertise come into this equation of like taking that AI GTM transformation step?
The big place up. So there's two factors that we're doing it today. So factor one is, how do we take the training and teach people how to do selling right? And we have different ones for like BDR versus seller versus enterprise seller, where we would teach them the methodology of how to sell properly, like what the conversation would be like, all the stuff that you guys know that a methodology provides. The other thing that we're growing and that I've been tasked to grow is, how do we help companies do this stuff? How do we help them implement this stuff into their process? How do we do that? That's the new area of Sandler that we're growing into, where it's like, okay, we're helping you help your sellers, but then do you have the infrastructure you need? How are you using AI? What does it look like? And how do we help you implement that to get more efficiency and effectiveness out of it? A key area that we're focusing on right now, that the two things that you can't get from that you need and have never been able to get. One is an ROI for enablement, and two is, are they actually using it? And So we're building on top of the training. What we're going to put around it is that with these tools, right? Like I can listen to calls now. I could do role plays. I could do all sorts of different things. We're going to start evaluating we're going to start evaluating the sellers, the BDRs, the customer success people that we're training, and then putting them through a core metric. What we're calling it is what we're calling a compete score, which is basically revenue per rep, but normalized for what it would be for a net new or a hunter or a farmer or a CSM. So all we can measure them the same, but looking at revenue per rep with the idea being, if you do a methodology, if a methodology works and you're able to train your team, what you're going to see is your distribution curve is going to sandwich together, because all of your sellers will start doing things in a better way and it'll move up. So we want to build that methodology in and then help you get all of your sellers better and more consistent, and then also doing better. In order to do that, we actually need sellers to do the things that you're taught, right? So what we found, so we're running a test on this right now with one of our skills, and what we're seeing is we're using conversation intelligence to understand, like, how well do you know the skill just by looking at the calls that you're taking, like how well are you scoring. And on average they're scoring at about 40%, pretty bad, like pretty bad at that particular skill. We put them through training, and then we have them do a role play on that same skill, like right after, because we don't want anyone forgetting this type of stuff. Their learning goes to 80%. And then literally the next day we put them on progressive scoring, where we're now looking at their calls again. Their scores go right back to 40%. So basically what you're seeing with a lot of the methodology that I don't think has been visible in forever or ever is, hey, sellers are kind of like, I've been there, done that. I'm going to listen to the training, sit and take the course, tell my manager how awesome it is, and just do the same shit that I've been doing already. Like
This is what we've been talking about in the GTM Council forever, which is there's two kind of major roadblocks in all this GTM transformation. One is systems, and the other one is rep adoption. And I kind of get excited of like, man, if I can, I feel like AI has the potential, and this may end up straying from our agentic SDR one, Noah, but I feel like AI has the potential to fix this rep adoption, right? Like if you've got like little open clause listening to everything your people are saying and be like, no, you said that wrong. No, you said that wrong. Run through a role play. I feel like that has the potential to be so much more powerful. How do you think about that, Seth?
It's in the moment.
it can be done. Now you're going to have to break some norms, right? And this is like, methodologies are entrenched, right? This is how we've always done it. I've been doing this for 60 years. But you're going to have to break some things, right? Like when you evaluate how well a person is doing a skill, I'm not giving you a survey anymore. I'm not going to ask you how good you think you are at this skill. I'm going to have you actually execute it. And then I'm going to monitor it when you're on calls with customers. And then I'm not going, so like one of the things that we're going to change is certification is now a test, right? You do the training, you pay for it, you take a test. Congratulations, you're certified by Sandler. We're not going to do that anymore. You'll have like a base, like, yeah, you took the training and you're certified, but then we're going to have a certification that's going to be based on two things. Are you actually executing it on calls with a customer? And are you actually performing? Those two things together, if you can perform at a level where you're executing the methodology as intended, and then you're also performing as intended, congratulations, you'll get your highest level of certification, and it'll go down from there. But I'm going to certify you on what you're actually saying to a customer. Go ahead, Noah.
No, this is, I think this is transformative. And there was a conversation earlier today. I think a huge opportunity is on the enablement front for what's happening, because there's a lot about, automating all of the administrative processes and just allowing reps to be on the phones, engaging with customers and prospects more often during the day. So you get that consistency. The second piece is what oftentimes you find is it's not the product technical enablement that everyone's swarming and worried about. It's literally the sales. It's like how to think about what the next step is. Are you asking the right sort of discovery questions? Are you adding value to the conversation and progressing the deal along? And that's where I think people struggle, but nobody ever raises their hand. And you're right. It's always we're going to do a one-time training, but now you're right. It's every single call, and you can start to aggregate that, which is really exciting, and get the real-time feedback. So the whole offline, you're going to learn everything at once, tends to go away because it's ongoing. When you get asked a question or you don't do something the right way, it's in the moment, you get reinforced, and then it continues on, in perpetuity, right? It's everboarding.
Yeah, and that means you never forget it. So then I can actually test and say, if you're using Sandler skills, are you getting better? And
Right.
my theory on this is we're going to find some stuff out about our methodology. We're going to be
Yeah.
like, hey, like this works really, really well. This doesn't work at all. We see no outcome that happens at all with this. So we're going to morph the way we do training to do more of the stuff that we know works and less of the stuff that we know doesn't. Right. But I couldn't agree more. It's the reason why I came here is because I think it is the way you talk, like super, like really good. There are good sellers who are just really good at manipulating their number and finding a way to get more potential in their territory.
No, what?
Those
Wait, what?
sellers,
Oh, come on.
No.
those are the sellers that you want to
What's-
kind of go away. Like, because those people shouldn't be rewarded. They're not doing anything of value. They just position that they're doing a lot of value for themselves, but they're actually hurting the company, right? They're positioning themselves. So you end up paying that seller more than they deserve because they've been able to get an outsized set of potential. Then you have those sellers that are just like magic, right? They find a way when they go in the room, they know how to execute in a way where they talk to the customer, they uncover pain, they know how to get to where they need to go to win a deal. Those are the sellers of the future that have been out there working away, and they are doing great things. They're usually a little bit of both, like they figured the game out, but like those are the people that are going to get rewarded in the future, and those are the ones we want to go find. And I think it's not the technical side. The technical side is kind of important, but I honestly think AI is better on the technical side than it is on the sales skills side. Because I can get a bot on that'll tell me all the stuff I need to know about the technical piece and answer questions
Right.
for me. Yeah, I think customers would actually think that's cool. Oh, you've got an agent on it and answers all the technical questions. Isn't that neat? But then the hard work is how are you asking and understanding what's going on in a deal and really penetrating through kind of all of the different things to get to a place where you can push that deal to the next stage and then to a closed one. It's such an
So maybe
important
it's
skill.
like the Agentic SE, not the Agentic SDR, BDR.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's a great use case, and it's isolated, right? Like it's much easier to train an agent on everything you need to know about a product than it is to train an agent on how to engage with a human who is completely unpredictable, right? Like we've all been on calls with customers. You never know what the heck's gonna come out of us, like as you're having those conversations or where it's gonna go. So that's a uniquely human thing, and I think people want to have that uniquely human conversation.
In your sales team, where would be the places you'd be focused on that you could automate and you could take away the work? It sounds like the SE, the BDR, like what? How would you attack if somebody says like, "Listen, I just want to drive sales team effective productivity like 2x." Like, where would be the biggest leverage points you would focus on for that?
The number one thing, and this is going to sound obvious, but there are so few companies that do it. I would remove the seller from the capture process completely. You're out. Like I'm going to set up tools that record your conversations, capture emails, capture everything that's going on. And I'm going to capture that in a way that you're out of it. And one, to save them time, but they don't do it anyway. So I don't think it's a huge efficiency gain there. But the place where it becomes valuable is if I have all that stuff and it's being captured consistently across all my sellers, now I have a data set that I could rely on. Whereas in the current world, I've got seller A who writes everything, seller B who writes nothing. And then like, it just doesn't be, so no matter what your data says, it's completely unreliable. But that would be like the first thing. I do not want you doing any of it, and I want to derive insights from that. Then I would use that to feed
By the way,
that.
I totally agree that like RevOps and enablement spend so much time chasing reps to put in data, and it's a pointless exercise. If
Yeah.
you look at a Momentum, which Salesforce just bought, and you look at a couple of these other tools, and getting your right data foundation is like now they're on calls, they're on emails, all of that stuff is capturable.
Yeah, and now think about the cycle that goes through, right? So now your research becomes easier. Because if I have all that stuff, now I put that through a lot of the cool things that are going on around enabling research account. Think about it. You go back like even 3 or 4 years, how we used to do account plans. I mean, I think we've all probably done the 50-page account planning deck for our company. We can have like 4 companies that we would do it for a seller. And now like that's just done. And it's not just done, it's done with context. So if you have all the capture, now you can use AI to bring in all the external signals, pull in all of the conversation that's happened and give you the research that helps you understand what to do. One thing I'm not a huge fan of is when I hear next best action and like I'm just going to tell the seller what to do next. I hate that. Like I really, and the reason for it is if it was that damn easy, then I wouldn't need a seller. Like if it was just execute step 1, execute step 2, and I could just rotely tell you what to do, I wouldn't need a seller. But what would be really valuable is here are the 3 steps that you could take. Here's what your peers usually take, and then you make the decision of what you're gonna do. Then execute, and then document what that step was. So when the seller executes, since we have data capture, I could pull that in. And if you start seeing that work, now you start recommending that one higher, and then your teams will learn from themselves. So
I love you. I've always gone for that feedback loop, right? Of even when we have a gain side of like, hey, what should you do next on the account? Like, it's never perfectly obvious.
No.
And I think if you just feed it to people and like, you should do this, you should do this, and you have to check it off, it's annoying. I love your idea of if you automate the data capture, you can just see what they did as well too. That makes a ton of sense. Okay, so you believe in next best suggested action, but more like top 3 that's learning versus like one single one, right?
yeah, I want a seller to be able to say, I think you're wrong, and I'm going to
Mhm.
do this. Because that's the value of a great seller, right? They're like, screw you. I know what's right. I'm going to go do it. But the cool part about it is they can only do, if you're capturing and cycling that through, at some point you're going to tell that seller, look, I get it. You think you know what you're doing. Here's the data. You suck. Like, so don't do that anymore. So I'm going to actually put you on a path to actually get better. But then on the other side too, you're going to have the sellers that are just intuitively know how to do the right thing. And they'll go through and do they'll blaze a new trail for you on how to sell. And then you'll see it and then pull that back. So all your other sellers could start doing it too. That's where like you'll get a step change. Like one of the pieces that I think is going to happen with methodologies is you'll have a base methodology, Sandler's core concepts, been around for 60 years, all of this stuff. And then each customer will have their own build on of the methodology based on all of that iterative data coming through and saying,
Oh,
what's
that makes sense.
unique for you and your company? Use Sandler in this way, but with these unique pieces. So then you all have your own unique methodology.
So there's
Found
no like, here's 9 fields that you have to fill out, and you can tell the reps just like looking at the next field, like, okay, so who's actually going to buy this thing? Okay, you got that down. No, so if I were to give you a PO, where would that route to? Who would like all those elements of like step, 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 step? It'd be more dynamic. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's presented to us with AI that you'd never be able to think of doing that before, but now you can. Like now
Cool.
I would also say no one's doing this right now. So any vendor that says they're doing this right now really well, just the simple thing of being able to capture and say, here are the recommendations and provide a percentile success rate in those situations. Nobody's doing that. And nobody's also doing the, here's what I did. Most think about that, how hard that is to do. How do I capture what the seller did and put it in context to that one step? It's way, way, way harder than it sounds. You'll have vendors that'll tell you, oh yeah, we do that.
Yeah.
Well, like it's there, that is so freaking hard to do because you have to contextually understand the step you're in and what does that step mean in the context of all your other steps. Because how do I know step 1 is step 1 of the deal cycle? Like, so there's a lot of complexity to making what we just said happen, which I think everybody wants. Not a soul is doing that yet. The technology and it's not even close to being able to do that yet.
So Seth, I love how opinionated you are, and you're a quote machine, which is going to be fun for this thing, which is good because I'm curious, like, how do you think about vendors? Are you vendor agnostic? Do you have vendors where you're just like, wow, I love it when I see them in the stack? Do you bring vendors in? How do you, and if you want, like, feel free to shout out the vendors that you think are pushing the bounds on some of this stuff too.
I try to be vendor agnostic in my judgment, but also vendor fair in where I think they're doing things better than other people. And So when I was in the last 6 years, my main space I covered was conversation intelligence. So
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah.
basically watched Gong from 2000 all the way through to where they are today, and had a lot of really tough back and forth conversations with them, opinions and different things. But I watched them do something that nobody else did. Like, if you think about it, there's nobody in the space that actually does CI incredibly well. They've kind of wiped the field, very similar to what Salesforce did with SaaS, right? SaaS CRM. They
Yeah.
looked up, and all of a sudden there were no competitors that were with them. They're around, but nothing big. So they've done an amazing job of just being obsessively focused on how do I turn a conversation into insights, like unstructured data into insights. And I would tell you, like, every year there was another reason they were dead. Like, there's another, and every year there was another reason why they could be dead. Like, I remember having conversations, like, nobody's like where they thought, like, we're just as important as a CPQ tool to a vendor. Like, no, you're not. Like, that CPQ tool in a big complex organization is a must have. Like, they have to have it. They actually can't sell without it. Conversation intelligence, not quite yet. I think now we're starting to get to that point. So, like, that's a vendor where I've had very negative conversations with them and very positive conversations. But the place that I try to be with it is at least be able to talk to where you are. The part that I struggle with, and not struggle with, where I'll get into arguments around a vendor, is the vendor is just basically trying to say they do stuff they don't do.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
they always do. Like,
Yeah.
the answer is yes to everything. We can do everything. Like, when I would do waves and you'd go through the criteria, the answer was either yes or don't answer the question. And I get it. Like, that's that, because if I don't answer the question, then maybe you, like, fake score me the way that you should because you don't quite know, which is possible. But, like, that's the thing. I try to have fair conversations with vendors around what
Yeah.
they do well, what they don't do well. I'm a massive advocate for technology. Like, I want these vendors to succeed, but I also, like, I want the ones to succeed they're actually adding value, not the ones that are just kind of blowing smoke and trying to get you to buy something that isn't real.
Dude,
Yeah, I
this
know
is why
Andy
we
and I
love
both
having
have
you in.
spent so much.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead. No.
I was just gonna say we both spent so many hours, weeks, like months, maybe years, working with some of our vendors and in a bunch of different ways because it's like we believe in that there is something, and as much as stuff was out there, there just never was anything that was really solving everything that we really needed, and the fear was that we were being limited by a lot of the technology.
Yep.
We weren't able to be like our vision was bigger than what the vendors were providing, and that was super frustrating. And so we spent a lot of time working with them, like trying to incorporate a lot of the elements. But like the CI piece is a really good one because that is now a thing in everybody's tech stack. Like it didn't used to be, but now it is. But then my always push on that was, well, the challenge is you're going to have tons of data at the first end of the sales cycle or, the very top end of the funnel. But
Yeah.
where the real meat of the conversations happen is in the bottom half of the funnel. We are really getting into like really interesting perspectives that would be helpful for everybody, but it's on your mobile phone. It's in a meeting. And so this element of incorporating all that power that you're getting at the very top end of the funnel and supplementing it with what's happening down below, that's that intelligence that I would love to extract because that's the one, even for like the BDRs, the challenge with that role is oftentimes you're very transactional between,
Yep.
qualified lead and an opportunity, but you don't see the conversations that happen beyond it. And even from a learning perspective, that's where you learn. That's how you become an AE because you're
Yep.
learning what are the questions you're going to be asking later on, and I can incorporate that sooner in my conversation. That's always been on my wish list. Haven't
And
seen
I,
it yet.
oh, I gotta,
Oh,
I gotta, one that really prompted me here is we're talking about these vendors, what they can do. The big topic, I think, Seth, as you know, in GTM Council, it's just been all over the place, is buy versus build, right? Like, and sometimes, now you could potentially just have like a Zoom capture and dump it in and do all this stuff. I think we debate a lot on this one, and I think my personal view is they may oversteer slightly towards build and then come back. But I'd be curious how you look at your clients. Like, are you seeing clients that are building rather than buying and being successful? Or yeah, I just love your take on buy versus build because you probably see more instances than most people.
Yeah, it's crazy because the build versus buy thing has been around forever. I mean, how many calls have you? I mean, I remember sitting in conversations with our IT department, going, "Oh, I could build that for you." I'm like, "Yeah, you could build it in 6 months, and then by the time you build it in 6 months, the criteria I gave you 6 months ago won't work." So like, build.
Yeah, but it's changed, man. Like I
Oh yeah,
literally
yeah.
I took Claude, I dumped in every conversation we've had in Whispered, every testimonial, every objection, everything, and it built like this entire thing for me. And then I'm able to flow that back in to learn, right? And so I'm like, somebody pinged me the other day, like, hey, how would you build like your enablement corpus, and where would you put it, right? And I'm like, hey, I love Hyperbound for a lot of their stuff,
Yeah.
but I use that for most things, but I still might want to have like a corpus that could plug into every one of my tools. And so I think a lot about, man, it's possible now to build some of this stuff.
It is, and like the stuff you couldn't build before, like I mean, in the past, it would be the IT person that would build that. Like you could have a RevOps person build it, and they know a lot more about what they want than the IT person does, and they could build it way quicker. The
Yeah.
thing that I'm seeing constantly come up, and you're seeing it actually happen in the market because you're watching vendor after vendor after vendor build out MCP servers to allow to connect, and then Claude connections and OpenAI connections. That connection point of being able to have all of your data run into Claude and be able to manipulate, like that seems to be where it's at. Like there's a ton of utility and there's enough demand that I mean, could you imagine, like, why would you want to create a connector that pushes all your data into Claude? Like if you had a choice, would you do that? Because like, I mean, you could basically, I mean, it puts you at risk if you don't add any value besides your data. The interesting part about that is where the value comes is the human entering the data into, like, in Outreach, in Gong, in any of these tools. That human piece is where the value is that comes into Claude. And that's the thing you can't really do in Claude yet. Like it's clunky. Like you could pull all that stuff in and get great insights. And I think that's where you're seeing people use it right now. Like RevOps, people
Yeah.
love it. I think honestly, like Noah, like we were talking about, Vaughn. I think Vaughn is building basically that version for a RevOps leader, but tuned to the RevOps leader. So it's better situated to handle. So they're doing fine tuning
Right.
and other stuff that you can't prompt, that, based on usage and what they're seeing, they're saying, oh, that just makes it better. But you're seeing many, many people just do that in Claude. Like I'm just going to connect it all together. And then I could ask a million different questions. And it seems to be easier to do it there than in any of these tools. It's baffling because if you were to ask each one of these tools, they would say, "Oh yeah, we could do all that for you," but they must not, they
Well, they
must not be
can.
able to.
They can, but you don't need them to. Right? So they
Yeah,
can, and they'll charge you, and they'll be part of their value proposition. And that's, I
sure.
think that's the delicate balance here is it's your point on the very beginning where vendors will say they do everything. Well, then you kind of can do everything. But the question is, well, that's just a wrapper. That's a wrapper. That's a wrapper. Like all these things you can do, but that's such little value. What is it that you really do well? Right? It's like,
Yeah.
I go back to this like moment in Three Amigos, and sorry for the old reference, but it's like, what does this town do really well? And it's
Yeah.
like, that's what you really want to get down to the vendor is like, what value, what mode are they building around the tool set that you're going to be able to leverage on versus something that's like, either it can build this or you can kind of do this for me. And I think there's a space for this. And this is something maybe slightly different as well, is maybe I don't need a full-fledged vendor, but I necessarily don't want to create it myself. Is there kind of something that's more of a platform in the middle that kind of has some of these things together? But then when you take it back to, to your go to market and to the end users, right? Again, this is more of an ops focused sort of centric, conversation piece. But when you bring it back to the end users, to the sales reps or the BDRs, SDRs, AEs, you kind of need something you need something that's a little less, it's more foolproof.
Yeah.
It's got to be more refined. Because if there is an issue where, oh, it didn't really work in this situation, and you've kind of burned that, it has to work. It's like autonomous cars. Like
Yeah.
the margin of error is much less than it would be in a normal car. So you've got to be able to provide something that's like really good that people can depend on. I think that's the challenge of like, we can experiment, we can build, but are we, and maybe we can build something that does what we need better than what's out there today, but then it's 6 months from now. And we've had conversations. I mean, I was on the phone with Gong yesterday. They were talking to me about their offline conversation capture. I think that's like a cool thing, or Agent Force, and they're coming out. it's this timing element. Like right now, if we were to go today and you were to build out a new tech stack, do you bet on stuff that's coming in 6 months? Do you go with what a vendor has today, or do you try to supplement it? I think that's the real struggle we're seeing across the board from the ops side specifically, because we're in this tweener stage.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that nobody that like that I'm starting to hear more and more talked about that's talked about that nobody's really been talking about around the cool things I can do with AI and what you could build with AI, and especially from an operation standpoint. It's really easy to build cool looking stuff, but the 6 months down the road, how do I maintain it? How do I do changes
Yeah.
to it? How do I make sure that it syncs with, like, all of that stuff is not worked out at all. So you can build a cool looking thing and you can maybe get it to work in your business, but then you've got to maintain it, fix it, keep changing and updating it. What happens when you break something? You put 4,000 people on a vibe coded tool and then something like, there's all that part that is just, it's very complicated still. So
Yeah.
even if you could build these great tools, the operationally managing them is very difficult. Like that's where it's worth it just
Yeah.
to say, well, I'm just going to buy the infrastructure because I can depend on it, and then I'll build AI over the top of it and get value from it.
Well, we've
Seth,
talked
any
to a
horror
few.
stories of people that have tried to build? You don't have to name the companies, obviously, but like the shitstorm that happens when somebody tries to build. Have you seen that? Where
I mean, yeah, I mean, they'll try to build it out. They put it in place. Then they announce it to the rest of the group and everyone loves it. And then 2 weeks later, it goes down. They have no freaking clue how to fix it. And then it's like, okay, well, everyone loved it, but you ran into one hiccup, one data feed broke, and then all of a sudden it's unusable. Or you end up being the person that's constantly trying to troubleshoot and fix this, and it becomes a full-time job to manage that. It's
Yeah, I agree. I have versions of apps that I'm shipping that Andy ships, and they break all the time. And then I've got my amazing partner over in India that's kind of like my back end dev guy that nothing breaks when he does it. But it's like that is a product release process rather than RevOps vibe coding some stuff.
Yeah,
And
it's a
so I think that
professional. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a serious thing, right? The fun. You hear a lot of people. The fun kind of goes out of it. I've built it. Like for me, like I built something. I'm like, okay, I want this maturity map. I want to do it. I got it working. I love it. Oh wait, I've got to connect it to a data source because I want to store the data. How do I get it up onto a website? How do I make sure like it? Oh, someone just asked me to change page 4 on this one. Like, oh crap. How do I ask this tool to do that?
All of those I've gotten over. I think it's more like the release process, testing, the fact that you want to start to have agents talk to other agents. That's the part where I like everything you named of like changing stuff, shipping stuff, putting on a website. Like
Got it.
I've mastered all that on my own with AI. But I'm like, there's this whole nother level that is sophisticated engineers that you're gonna need to hire those people. And those people are product engineers, not GTM engineers.
Yeah. Yeah, those
Yeah.
you've moved past the go-to-market stuff, and now you need a product. You need someone who's an expert in those things you're not an expert in, don't have any interest in being an expert in, to be able to handle it. That makes sense.
Seth, Andy and I were talking last week with an individual a guest that's going to be on, that a lot of their reps are doing a lot of the vibe coding stuff and figuring out ways to be more efficient. And then they'll bring that back into like the centralized ops team. And then the ops will then go say, okay, is there something here that we can build out? Is this kind of a nice to have tool? Because you're right. If it's mission critical and you're doing it yourself, you run a lot of risk. If it's kind of a nice to have, like efficient, fun tool to use and it breaks, it's not the end of the world. From that element, because this, and then what you mentioned earlier, which is you want to basically create this environment, extract all the information from the reps without them kind of being involved. But now there's like, okay, so let's talk about email sequencing. I'm in the state of mind where I don't know if I've seen a really good email come in any sort of sequence. The best emails, I still go back to the BlackBerry days where it's like it fits on the screen of a BlackBerry and it's a personalized, just a couple sentences, meaningful, hey, I want to chat with you, as opposed to selling me in 3 succinct paragraphs. Do you see a world where the prospecting element isn't coming from a BDR or an AE? It's coming from a centralized team on behalf. And so then maybe the first email is the CEO, and then the second email is the AE. but it's all automated on their behalf. And then when people respond and interact, then they get involved? Or do you still see it being like, here's the sequence, you set it up, you run it as an individual, and it's your little domain? Do you see one or the other? Or do you have a preference?
I think it's going both ways and there's a preference. That to me is where the value of the go-to-market engineer is, right? Like the ability to do custom. So you have to be super smart with how you use that data and how you set it up. But if you have a really good engineer on that and they can gather the right data points, there's no reason you can't do a fully customized, valuable email at the top of funnel where everyone is different and everyone is aligned to how you want to talk to them. I think that's a real thing that's happening. That's
Yeah.
one version, right? And from an efficiency standpoint, that's a really good way. But even, I mean, just think about how do you, when you're building these, you're still saying these are the 8 data points and customize the email off the 8 data points. So it's still going to look generic to a certain degree. It'll just be a little bit more. I echoed this company and instead of that company. So like the other side of it is I'm going to do the research at the individual BDR level. And I think there's a lot of sense to that in one regard, in that you get very unique responses, but it's also highly inefficient. So like to me, the best of both worlds would be you have the BDRs do it, but you have that controlled to understand what's going on, and then they could play off each other to be able to build it out. Um, I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. Like, and I think it depends on how sophisticated you can get at top of funnel with your data and
Yeah.
your ability to prompt a really good email, custom email. Because I see it too. Like the most of the emails that you get, it's becoming very clear when I'm looking at something that is AI.
No, somebody called out the other day, I think it was Jordan, who was like, yeah, there's semantics, the way that Claude talks, and you
Yep.
can start seeing that pattern, and you're like, holy crap, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And
Yep.
every time you like look at stuff. Yeah.
It is so true. It's like even like the visuals too on the design side, when you're looking at something that was built by Claude, like you just know it.
I feel like that's the danger with all this agentic stuff is we lose the real creativity, right? Like as a person, you're going to try things that are, I mean, all of these SDRs are trying to break through the noise. And if they're all sending the exact same basic stuff, the noise you'll never rise above it. And that's, I have this thing now on my LinkedIn that says, hey, if you know that I like Keanu, you know how to personalize your outreach to me. 1 out of every 200 people do it. But the one rep sent me like, "Hey, here's the red pill, here's the blue pill, you pick which one
Uh,
you want." And so like I think there's enough out there that you should be able to personalize it, have fun with it, right? Like, and I
oh,
think that's the danger is, I mean, AI, they have that like you can dial up or down how crazy it gets. But if you dial up the crazy, you may go crazy in like a really bad way with your brand.
Yeah.
And so it's a really interesting thing of, do we end up with just a ton of vanilla outreach?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that today. And like to me, the research should be used to find the unique outreach. And then the part that I think is really important is I don't think you're gonna get the I'm gonna do something different. That would be, I think that's gonna be where a human will always shine, because like when you're looking at stuff like trying something different, that's where a place where you can, hey, I'm gonna do something completely out of the blue. I'm to try to get your attention. My goal is to get your attention, so I'm gonna do something completely wacky and it works. And then that becomes your standard on how you do it until it doesn't work. Like think about how often you would change cadences because they die. Like they become really valuable and then the response rate dips. So it's okay, I got to reinvent that. So it's good to have people looking at it and challenging it and changing it and watching the market dynamics and doing that. The thing is you could put AI around it so you have a lot more variables and help to be able to find all those different things.
yeah, and that, I think your message is loud and clear. If people aren't picking up on it, which is the best reps will continue to be the reps that are creative and thinking strategically about how they're engaging with prospects and customers, and not just relying on whatever else is out there to drive leads to their door. It's still, you got to figure out a way to break through it. And that's the same tried and true since the dawn of sales. And so even though things are easier, you don't get lazy, I think is what you're saying,
Yeah,
right?
like I'll give you another one. I know we're running up on time, but like the look and feel of what you would send to a customer, I can put 2 bullets in and I can create this elegant, beautiful looking infographic, whatever, and send it to a customer. That takes no time at all, and you don't know crap about the customer. But you've done it and it looks like it's good. But anybody who would like closely read, like you're talking, Andy, you're talking about it, which one, like you're talking about the matrix and which one is going to closely read to understand what you care about and incorporate it in.
AI
That
can do
will
that.
always get lost when you're using AI. So if you do that, that's bad because eventually it's just all vanilla. But if you're actually looking for and providing that concise, like nobody wants a 3-paragraph email from someone they've never met. Like give me something interesting in a bullet or two that gets my attention, gets me to read it. And then I could, that's your best chance to move on. And that's where I think people will come in, not trying to be overly fancy and gloss up something, but just trying to be to use these tools to penetrate and get your attention and get you to click and to ask for more.
I do think AI can build this like Sendoso, who I love now. They've got this thing where it can listen to the gong calls and figure out what gift you should send people.
Oh,
And I'm like,
nice.
fucking brilliant on that side.
Yeah. Yeah, that's value, right? Like that is useful. You're helping me understand what to do with the customer. And if I'm a seller, I could see, okay, they like this, and it's because I heard it here. So like it's a great use case.
All right, so we are bumping up on time, but I'm also one last question. You can choose which one you want to take on this. One is, um, uh, what is it going to look like in a year in terms of like, what does sales look like in a year, based on what you've seen emerging right now? Or do you have any other messages for CEOs trying to figure out how to accelerate their company's adoption to AI, or just breaking the myth of what they're thinking versus what's really happening? Whichever way you want to go with that.
Okay, I'm gonna go the latter. You hire these people to go make you money. You shouldn't be looking for ways to save money in places you're trying to make money. And right now what I see with AI is people are, oh, how do I cut resources and replace it with AI? To me, how do I use AI to make each one of those people 2x better than they were? Because I want this. If I have the same 8 people, but they could do 3 times the work at a higher quality, now I should make more money. Isn't that the goal you're trying to achieve by having those people? So why the freaking hell are we having so many conversations of replacement instead of how do I optimize and enhance? Because that's how you're going to grow your business. That's the hope. In a year from now, I don't know if that'll be the case. Honestly, I think it probably won't, because you'll go into the next year and everyone spent a ton of money on AI and they'll just do the natural thing of cuts. And there's all this other stuff going on around the new idea of growing a company without hiring more people is becoming very common. It's talked about all over the place. So every CEO now is going to be trying to make that happen.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been awesome, Seth.
Love doing it.
As always, I love our conversations. Thanks for being on here. And really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for the opportunity.